I now call to order the October 24th, 2023 regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Trustees, time being 6:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, make a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee Mason,
Here.
trustee Gator,
Here.
trustee Teets,
Here.
trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, Mayor Shesey.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Are there any conflicts of interest with the agenda tonight? No. Perfect. All right, we are going to move on to public comment. Individual wishing to speak, please approach this podium, state your name for the public record, and you'll be given 3 minutes.
Mayor Shesey, could you please address item
Yes.
A3?
Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Sorry, I skipped over that. No, thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
now on to public comment.
Hi, Karen Eifert. I live in the Knolls. I wanted to bring up again, you talked about the soft trail that leads off of the main trail that goes through our neighborhood in the Knolls. And I was told last year, hey, school, how do you say it? School to something.
Safe routes to school?
Safe Routes to School was going to be taking care of that, but I have heard crickets, completely crickets. And I just heard the guy from Probst, and I forgot his first name. He was talking about filling in those soft trails, and I'd like to know if do I talk to him about doing that so my son can ride his bike the whole way? Or do I apply to Kelly Haddling, or who do I talk to about that piece? And you can tell me after the meeting too, it's fine. But I also just wanted to reiterate that it's really hard to plan and do things for a child with special needs with the roads and the condition that they are in my neighborhood in the Knolls. And I know there's some new way of having to do it, that you have to do the roads a special way, but that should be taken into consideration because it's actually against the law to say, no, we will not meet your accommodation for accessibility to your neighborhood or to an education. He must be allowed to have be a part of his community, in his community where he lives. And that's true for any person with special needs. And so I really feel like this whole, I was also told last year, just fill out an email and send it in to this person. And then another person said, oh no, you can just talk to this person. He'll say yes or no. But I've got nothing but the runaround about getting the street in front of our house repaired or about the trail. And I'd really like to have a solid answer because I think over a year is kind of pathetic of addressing an issue that I come up here and talk about often. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment going once, going twice, sold. All right, next we will proceed on to the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title of the items?
Item C1, October 10th, 2023, regular meeting minutes.
Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shesey.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the consent agenda is approved.
thank you. All right, next we will proceed to the action items. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title of item D1?
Resolution number 43-2023, resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, making an agreement regarding operating and maintenance of Boxelder Creek watershed dams, B-dams, B2, B3, and B4.
Thank you. Now we'll have Mr. Bob Gowing, the Director of Public Works, present this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Bob Gowing, the Director of Public Works. Thank you, Kayla, for introducing me a minute ago, but I think I'm required to say that. So this item regards the agreement with our partners in moving forward with the B dams, the operation and maintenance of the B dams. And if you'll recall, we brought this to the board during the summer, and we were issued instructions to try and get this executed by the end of the year. And this is the executable document that was put together by kind of a combination of the attorneys for the various partners and the technical advisory committee that was made up of engineers from the various communities. And Tad Mullen with North Booter. So this is the document in your packet. I attached the PowerPoint presentation from that last presentation that I gave, just kind of for reference purposes, if anybody needed a reminder about this or that detail about the B dams. So I won't necessarily go through that in the interest of time, but if you had any questions on kind of any of that material, the history of how we got here, I'm here to answer those questions. If not, I thought we'd just leaf quickly through the agreement itself. And we're looking for kind of board feedback on the terms and conditions and the language in this agreement. And ultimately hoping to get it approved for execution by the town administrator and the mayor. So that said, it's right here in the packet. I would say that there were a few items that the group, kind of the combined legal and engineering group, talked about more than others. And those were voting procedures. Is it a majority? Is it, consensus? Is it based on how much money you're putting in, Trustee Gator? And in the end, I think it was the opinion of all that the best way to do this would be by consensus. So basically needing a unanimous vote for any changes, kind of operational questions. And when I say, well, I'll get to that in a second, because one group kind of gets iced out and things kind of start to go awry. And up to this point, the TAC has worked basically on consensus, and it's worked fairly well. Not everybody got what they wanted, but we all got what we needed out of this effort. And I think this agreement is kind of set up under the same general principle that we're going to get what we need out of this. We talked about the representatives to what is called the management committee in this, and that management committee would kind of take the place of the TAC. And the TAC did have some administrators and other folks from different towns that showed up, and kind of a consensus, if you will, of that group was that should probably be a staff member, maybe even somebody with the kind of the technical history and or technical understanding of kind of all the issues that we're likely to run into on these B dams are going to be about hydrology and hydraulics and about emergency action planning and things of that sort. Not likely to be a lot of policy level questions. The hope is that the policy is laid out in this document for all the policymakers and elected officials to ultimately agree to as modified, as might need to be modified. And we talked a lot about termination. The first draft had a clause in it that allowed our participant to withdraw from the agreement, basically kind of leaving behind all the money that they had put in up to that point. And in the end, we talked about what that would look like. And I think most of the people in that group, maybe all the people in that group, thought there really shouldn't be a way to get out of this. This agreement needs to stand for the life of these dams, which needs to exceed the life of this town and the life of these downstream communities as well. So we ended up just kind of taking that out, and that was some of the attorney feedback that we had as well. So those were the kind of the items that we spent the most time talking about, other than wordsmithing, which you get a bunch of engineers and lawyers in the same room, you got a problem with that. But
Bob, Would like to add in the discussion about the payment percentages and the cost allocation was discussed at length. And I think that's something the board discussed quite a bit in this, under the current allocation model, which was developed by SEH over quite a long period of time. This big old engineering study of risk and property values and a lot of things that I don't understand. Within that, Wellington ends up footing the largest chunk of the bill. And so the question came up of when is that reassessed? And we went around and around on a bunch of options for when that was, but ultimately a lot of options were added in, and in the end, and the agreement that's in front of you, all those options were then removed. And it's reassessed every 5 years. The reason for that was it allows the town and all the participants to plan 5 years of how much we're gonna pay. And it also, if we reassessed it every year or every 6 months, and at one point it was for every time that any property was annexed, which would end up being basically constantly, this entity would exist just to reassess its cost allocation models, and it would spend a lot more money doing that than it would actually doing any work on the
That
dams.
would be a
So,
full-time job for a consultant or a staff person.
yeah, real sweet gig.
That
So
model's
all that was
very
removed.
complicated.
So it's reassessed every 5 years.
And, county was kind of in favor of more frequent reassessment in a general sense, just because as we move forward and towns grow, some of the county's current risk kind of gets transferred to a municipality through the annexation process. And also the development that gets built that also potentially creates more risk happens because of the municipality. So, but in the end, it was, as Dan said, just that model is extremely complex. It has all the assessment data for every house and every property floodplain, and it is very large and cumbersome. And it's gonna take a lot of work to revise that and update it. So that'll be something that almost certainly we'd need to hire a consultant to do that. So with that, I'll just kind of stand for questions and here to answer questions also.
Thank you, Mr. Gowing. Questions from the board. Start with Trustee Daly.
Years into this. Thank you so much for your dedication and working on this.
That's been fun.
Yeah, years and years. I remember talks about this before I was a trustee. So appreciate your dedication to make this happen and get to this point. Thank you.
Trustee Gator.
So I think the two questions that I had, you already had answered that. So we're doing consensus. So that basically means that everyone needs to come to an agreement before, and that's if something's changing from the way the agreement's already set out.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. And then the other piece, I know, as I understand it, North Poudre continues to own, I don't know if they own all of the land or all the dams or a couple of them.
They own the land underneath the B2.
Okay,
But on the other ones, they have easements.
got it.
In
Okay.
general, they own the dam as it sits on somebody else's property with an easement for those.
Got it. For
that they
those
don't own
ones.
fee
Okay.
simple.
And then is there something in there just to make sure that when we talk about paying them to maintain the dam, that does not become an outrageous number? I mean, I don't know, but do we have something in place there to make sure that they don't just start raising that number to some ridiculous amount?
That's subject to review from the management committee.
Okay.
Which has, again, a representative from all the communities and North Poudre as well. And those changes would need to be made by consensus, which another way to say that is that every party has veto power.
Got it. So if they wanted to raise their rate or charge more money for maintenance, that has to get approved by the entire management.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Those are my questions. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Teets.
I do have a few questions. On page 210 of our packet, it discusses the Colorado Water Conservation Board notifying the town of potential changes to the Boxelder Creek floodplain. With the B dams, is there anything that's going to affect? So are they going to cross over in any way? Is there additional costs that we could be looking at if that floodplain changes? Is there any additional details we need to know?
That's a good question. The answer, I think, is no, because the FEMA restudy and the past FEMA study assumed those B dams were in place. And this was one of the critical reasons why the B dams need to stay, because the floodplain as it's currently mapped would be completely invalidated and would become much, much larger. So the B dams are in the hydrologic model for the floodplain analysis. So it's kind of already counted for.
Okay, so if they change that this month, it won't affect Wellington?
No.
Got it. Sorry, I have to get back. You answered two of my questions already. One was the consensus and agreement to mediation, so thank you for that. The other is the emergency flood warning system. In looking at, when we do this emergency flood warning system planning, does this cover the cost of an emergency action plan for Wellington? Or is that for only Larimer County?
It's for the entire B dam watershed, right? So everything that's considered a risk in the analysis and in the cost share calculations. I would say that it's a little bit broad, you know, frankly, the biggest impact to the town is most likely going to come as soon as the water gets up to the emergency spillway elevation. So the pond, the spillway is up here, and it takes a lot of water to get up there. But once it starts pouring over the spillway, our flow rates are immediately going to go way up, and that flood will expand past the floodplain limits as they're currently mapped. So there's details about how we inform our residents and that still need to be worked out mostly by us, but within the context of the county's existing early flood warning system, which, as you'll recall, we're adding some additional sensors and the EOC, the county EOC, which we're a part of right now, Emergency Operations Center.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so that addresses that question. So we'll still have to have an emergency planning as far as flooding goes for all of the generalized
Have
Wellington.
to take the general document and specialize it for Wellington, if you will.
Perfect. In the census. This was another one of those things where when we have discussions, and this is something we can discuss at a later time as well, but when we're looking at who represents Wellington when it comes to this, I think it's a great idea that staff is doing this, but I would love to eventually have a water board where the person, the chair that's a part of that water board is the one also assisting and representing the town and the community. So I know that's something I would really love to talk about for the future as far as planning goes. But other than that, that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Trustee Regan?
Thank you for what you're doing. Kind of surprised me. I knew we had some flood problems up here, and I believe in the packet it said that we didn't have the B dams, that 75% of Wellington could be underwater during the
No.
flood.
Yeah.
You know, the $30,000 per year seems like a lot of money, but if you've looked into flood insurance before, that's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, we are saving the citizens a lot of money by being in this and having this agreement going. So it's actually extremely beneficial for our town.
Very cost effective to our residents.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Trustee Mason?
Yep, Director Gowing, I just want to say thank you a lot on this. I know I've said this before, but I mean, taking this from a $25 million, $30 million project down to $487,670 over the course of 5 years is an incredible savings. And you guys, I know you guys have put in an incredible amount of work into this, so I just thank you for that. I know for me personally, the flood warning system comes right to the top of my mind. And I think last time you were here, we talked about potentially a partnership with the Larimer County Emergency Telephone Authority and something like that to be able to support our residents in the event that there is some type of catastrophic failure. But obviously nobody wants that, but if there was to be, we would want to know that. So just really appreciate the work that you've done on this. And I'm totally fine with a 5-year plan and reassessing it over 5 years. I actually think that's going to be a benefit to us because I think that's going to save us a little bit versus Larimer County, especially if we end up annexing additional property and that sort of thing, that would actually make our bill go up. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Trustee Mason. Mr. Gowing, spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears getting this thing put together, so thank you for doing that.
Would say this is a pretty good example with regional partnership as well.
Yeah.
All the other communities worked hard on it as well. And I thought it was pretty satisfying effort.
Awesome, thank you. Any comments from the public on this item? No, okay. Do I hear a motion on this item?
I move that we approve resolution number 43-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, making an agreement regarding operating and maintenance of Boxelder Creek Watershed dams, B dams, B2, B3, and B4.
I second.
May I get a roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Trustee Gator. Yes. Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Mason.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously and the resolution is approved.
thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item D2?
Resolution number 44-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Perfect. We have Mr. Alex Evonitz, the engineer for Public Works, will present this item.
Thanks for your time this evening. I appreciate that. Really exciting project. I'm excited to have been assigned this project. We were fortunate enough over the course of the last 18 months to land 3 specific grants: Revitalizing Main Street, MMOF, which is kind of a weird acronym. It's Multimodal Operational Fund, something like that. In addition to an HSIP, which is Highway Safety Improvement Program. If you look on page 33, and I don't know the document number in your agenda, there's a really clearly defined breakdown of the expenses. For example, from the Revitalizing Main Street, we're fortunate enough to be granted $1.8 million with no match. We were granted 1.349 million and change. Again, no match. HSIP, we were fortunate enough to get 294,624 with a match of $32,000. If you go down to section 3 on that same page, there's a really interesting statistic that CDOT included for us. What it summarizes there on the second kind of column that's blocked out there, the state and local agency is receiving $4,444,086 for a total match of $32,736. Pretty outstanding. What we did, as part of this program, CDOT requires an intergovernmental agreement. That intergovernmental agreement is pretty much common. It's been reviewed by legal and not an issue. There's some few things that during the course of time, we went through a couple of iterations. They seem to be pretty mundane, not particularly impactful. Excited to get the project going. The proposal that we presented to CDOT and to the grant authorities included information that was basically in the community development plan, parking improvements, drainage improvements, pedestrian safety improvements. Biggie is drainage. Drainage is a problem throughout town. CDOT threw us a couple of curveballs. Survey wise, I think the board approved last time unanimously is a contract for survey services that basically CDOT did not have really defined right away from 3rd Street to 6th Street. And so part of their requirement is for the grants was to define that. And they have some historical criteria. And that's what their surveying contract is trying to detail for us, which is, we're getting close. So hopefully we'll get answers to that within the next week or so. Finally, intergovernmental agreement will cover all construction expenses. The one thing that has been in the budget for several years has been the improvements for Cleveland Avenue. And I think in the 2022 budget, it was shown as $350,000. And then there were some other categories for drainage and things, I think totaled up to a total of 500,000. The town is going to be paying the design services directly. And the reason that was determined to be the best path was to eliminate many of the hurdles that federal funding require for the design aspect of the project. Because of those requirements, the cost of design would have escalated dramatically. So it seemed a far more prudent answer to go ahead and use the money that we already had allocated for that and similar work one time, get Cleveland hopefully finished 1st to 6th. It's going to be basically a generational improvement downtown. We may not get this opportunity to do this for downtown Wellington, the business core. It could be another 20 or 25 more years. So it's kind of exciting. I'm excited to be here and have this opportunity with this project. I'm available for questions.
Start with trustee Dietz.
I do have a few. Thank you so much. I did read through, there was one question I had on page 64. It says the state in its sole discretion may review construction plans, special provisions and estimates, and may require local agencies to make such changes therein as state determines necessary to comply with state and FHWA requirements. So that pretty much means that if we go through a design plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we go through a design plan and state sees something that they don't like, they can step in and say this needs to be redesigned?
Now, it's an interesting phrase that they include in there. The reality of it is the design will meet the criteria for CDOT design and construction standards. That's without saying. What's really great is the fact that in smaller communities, they give us a lot of flexibility on how best to meet the community needs versus them saying, you have got to have this and this. So it's really kind of it's a catch-all phrase that really normally will never come into play in this circumstance. So they've seen the conceptual drawings based on what we submitted to the grant authorities, and they're in total agreement. So we're trudging forward.
Got it. My other question is the last time we received estimates for the work and design, have we received estimates on what that cost is going to be downtown? Because we say it's fully funded, but define fully funded. Have we entered into the survey contract where this is the design and this is how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, the survey is a completely separate entity. It's
Mhm.
not, and again, that's being funded with town funds.
Correct.
But there's no specific, we have estimates that went in originally with the Revitalizing Main Street contract
Mhm.
with the HSIP. I think I mentioned HSIP, but that's actually for off system. So that's going to be pedestrian improvements.
Yep, off
not on the
highway.
state highway.
Yep.
And then the MMOF was the same way. That's primarily for drainage improvements. But yeah, should not, let me think. I think it was about $2.5 million roughly for Main Street, if I remember correctly. I'm just this is recall. The HSIP was about 325,000. That's where that 10% match came from.
Mhm.
Then the MMOF was actually an award of over $2 million, and they paid through the MMOF funds the entire match.
Got it.
So we got basically that entire 1.349535, whatever it was, without any matching funds at all.
Got it. So could we potentially be seeing a drastic increase in these construction costs when it comes back to us?
Highly unlikely. Staff generally follows those construction costs. CDOT publishes a cost data book monthly, and we watch those costs fairly quickly. And I must say, I've got to give CDOT kind of some kudos here, because I know most people don't get along with them very well, and I understand that completely. But they've actually really been kind of mentoring us a little bit through this process. And one of the things that I failed to mention, I apologize, they're throwing an extra $1 million in the project with no match, specifically just for the paving, which is kind of their specialty. So they're doing that, never requested it. It was money that they held back as part of the State Highway 1 overlay project. That happened, it wasn't this summer, it was previous summer, down to Fort Collins. And that was a freebie. Here's $1 million. We understand that you may be a little bit light on construction. We want to help. And so that was hard to argue with that.
And I think my last question, when you do go through the design process, and I know this is not something that you guys are at right now, but this is me with the ADA scope in mind of making sure the access on the north side of Cleveland is open back up, because you cannot access the north side of Cleveland with a wheelchair because of the way the fencing has been put out. I've heard the complaints 3 times from 3 different people that they've actually had to cross the road, cross up, and then cross again and come back around to access a point, or they push them in the street. So that's my big ask there, is that access is open back up, because right now we're actually in breach of, because that came after ADA law Title II, that actually we're in breach of allowing that outer thing in front of Soul Square to actually go in, as we wrote out ADA altogether in that section. So I'd love to see that open back up again.
Yeah, guaranteed. Actually, I have similar concerns about that area, but technically they do have the 4-foot width that is required. Now they're kind of using an existing, they're
without
using
the
an
trees.
existing tree grate,
Uh-huh.
which is probably not part of the program.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that being the case, I understand completely. The project will be totally ADA compliant. Crosswalks, pedestrian, there'll be bulb outs to limit the exposure to pedestrians as they cross. I'm kind of a detail person. And what I've learned over the course of my career is it doesn't take much to make a common project kind of special. So I'm going to try and do my best to see if we can get some community participation in a variety of different ways. We've got a lot of skilled people in town, and maybe through time, as people see this coming together, perhaps we can get some community input, and do some other things that may not be directly construction hardscape associated with the highway, but some beautification type stuff. And there are other grants. MMOF, as well as revitalizing Main Street. I don't know if you recall, we did get a small grant 2 years ago. And we did some street lighting, did some signage, did a variety of different things around the park, trash cans, picnic tables, all that kind of stuff. Those grants are still available to us. For construction, I think there's a maximum of $2 million. If I remember correctly, for capital improvements. That's something we can still go after. Right now, honestly, our limitation is somewhat staff time. Yeah, we're basically pretty maxed out in terms of our ability to take on more. This IGA will be a help, because it's kind of a first step in that whole, how do we get federal grants? How do we fund this? How do we track these projects? So this is certainly a learning experience, but it's not something that I think is in any way, shape, or form beyond our ability to deal with. So we're kind of excited to what some of these programs and applications might get us over time.
Got it. And I will stipulate that I'm not blaming you specifically for any
No,
of it. I'm just pointing it out in general, so it's noted and double checked. But I'm grateful to see ADA stuff getting done and accomplished here in our community. I hope to see a lot more of it, and those partnerships that we can reach with ARC of Larimer County is huge when it comes to grant writing and processes. And that relationship that we have with David there is going to be huge, and possibly securing additional funds for anything additional that we can do and utilize in that area. So I think it's wonderful, and I'm grateful. I'm happy to see us actually have handicap ramps available in downtown.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have a completion timeline on these different projects?
Yeah, there's one that's a little bit of an oddball. CDOT, unfortunately, kind of gave us a scare, because they told us we had to have funds obligated by the end of 25. And, end of 24. And the reality of it is they misinterpreted the federal requirement. The federal requirement was actually obligated was the IGA, not construction. And so they kind of set us into a hair on fire moment. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're going to get this out. But fortunately now they've got an understanding of what obligation is. And that's what the IGA triggers. So we have right now, the current schedule that I have put together has us completing construction in the end of 25. And then there's a fair amount of closure at the end. Correct. And then there's a little segment that goes down Fifth also for some drainage issues for Coal Creek. That's all gonna be part of this project as well, all within the right of way.
Okay. Appreciate all you doing and definitely gonna make some great improvements to our town. Got a question. I see this PII certificate in here. And I was just curious, is that federal guidelines where you can have illegals and you can't report them? Is that right?
No.
I thought I misread that. So
Yeah, no, that's never the case with any kind of federal or state funding. So I'm not sure, I don't have the document in front of me, so I apologize for not having the specifics. But yeah, guaranteed, anything that's part of the IGA would not allow such a circumstance.
right. Thank you.
Sure.
Trustee Mason.
Really appreciate it, Alex. I know a lot of work's gone into this as well. I did have an opportunity to talk to Ms. Garcia about the timeline a little bit, so that's very exciting that it's not going to impact the 4th and that sort of thing. So very good stuff there. But obviously, you know, for me, I think the drainage concerns getting mitigated on Cleveland is right at top of mind for everybody, and not having the giant swimming pools out there that we do now. You did answer my question about the survey results earlier. So I do look forward to hearing a little bit more about that in the future, but
Certainly.
that's all I've got. So.
Trustee Daly.
I appreciate, the very early days of safe routes to school, some of these items came up. So I know that you've been working on these for a very, very long time. And I'm happy to hear, I'm sidewalk and, well, walkability, of course, is really important to me. But crosswalk safety has always been something I've been really passionate about, mostly because I used to almost get ran over almost every day. So, you know, before we really improved a lot of our crosswalk safety. So the concepts of the bulb outs, in case, you know, that brings the crosswalk distance very much, it's a much a smaller crosswalk, right? And you're out so people can see you coming. All of those, of course, and everything will be ADA accessible. Any improvement we ever do, ever. PII is talking about personal information. I don't know if you remember, Kelly Holding gave a presentation on that for other state and I think it was federal grant requirements that was included in those. So, and the other item, I agree. I think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we're matching less than 1% of all the funds.
It's actually 0.007.
Is it? My math is really bad. Okay, so oh, but percent. Yep, that is okay. Same. Yeah. And I think that is awesome. So thank you so much for your hard work on this. I cannot wait to see the outcome. And I just hope that when this construction's going, though, that everybody goes out of their way to support Cleveland businesses that will have hard access issues during construction. So, but thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Gator.
I think most of my questions have been answered. Again, appreciate the work you guys have done on this. We have all seen and walked through the puddles downtown. So I know residents will be happy with that. Overall, I mean, this is just a fact of anytime we're doing grants with state and federal, is just keep in mind there's always strings attached. And this is no different from any of the others. There are definitely strings in there, which if you take government money, you get to play by the government's rules. So other than that, I don't have any issue. Appreciate the work that staff is doing on this. These are the type of grants that I like to see, is the projects our community has been coming to us. You know, we have a resident here that's been talking to us about streets in their neighborhoods. I'd love to see more funding for projects like this. It's great to do things in studies and different things like that, but it would be fantastic to be able to get funding to fix things like water plants and streets that need to be fixed. So appreciate you guys working on this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's cool to see you get excited about the creative stuff when you're talking about it too, to get the community involved in the revitalization and, you know, beautification of it as well. Get that involved in the whole project. What better way to bring the town together, you know? Our downtown's been hurting for years, and this is yes, this is gonna be incredible. So thank you for presenting this and getting this put together for us.
Appreciate that. I've been around town since the seventies. And so I kind of have a warm spot in my heart
Yeah.
for trying to improve things. But yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
What's been an issue before, when you had to start across the road down Cleveland, you can do that without having to worry about getting run over.
Well, in the winter, the ice drags out onto the highway too, and we've had a couple of rear end accidents already that the sheriff has made us aware of also. So it's a season, not only just a summer drainage thing, it's a seasonal thing as
yeah.
well as summer melting or winter melting. Daytime winter melting and then freezing overnight.
Quick question, when you get, when you're setting up this project, are you gonna be able to coordinate that with the different businesses? So you're always gonna have good direct access going into them?
Guaranteed. That is going to be one of the principal criteria. In fact, even as part of the design process, I want them to at least come up. Obviously, the contractor themselves will come up with their own planning for how the project will progress. But I think from an engineering standpoint, we can certainly consider what some of those options might be. So that going into the actual construction contracts, we are aware of what some of the hangups might be and can bring that to fore for some of the businesses that obviously you're going to be impacted. We're not going to be able to not impact the businesses, but the idea is to keep that really small and short.
Perfect. Yeah, I was in Fort Collins when they were doing Drake, and I bet you I saw 4 or 5 big businesses go out.
Yeah,
So it can definitely make a huge impact.
absolutely. Understood.
And a question on that note, could we possibly have our community business liaison specifically reach out to each business and maybe even try to pull together a time that they're invited to come in and sit with Alex and the team? Could we try to set something like that
Yep,
up?
we are already working on that. So
Sweet.
working on our communications and opportunities for people to visit the website to see process and the process and status and things like that. So absolutely, you're on the right track.
I reached out to some businesses as well and they've already been engaged. So that's great news. Yeah.
So when's the actual start date gonna be?
Right now I've got it sometime in late July of 23.
For
Oh, it's 4, excuse me. 4.
I was gonna say, you got a time machine?
Yeah, no. Dang watch. But no, correct, 24. And completion again, it would be sometime, probably late spring in 25. And then the closeout process is gonna take a few months to get that. All the federal requirements associated with the project, dialed in and accepted. It's a reimbursable, so.
One thing I will say, and I just recently visited a state where they're going through massive adjustments with their construction on a main feeder interstate highway. And each business at the entrance of, because they only have little side chutes to be able to turn into the businesses. Every business where you could turn in and access it, there was a business sign put on a green placard where you were actually able to turn and access, and it alleviated so much confusion on where you could access that business from. So I don't know if that is a general idea, but it honestly was a huge kudos to being able to know, because if you don't know, you get fed up and you move on. So, and I just want to make sure that people aren't not knowing how to access. And I will say the green street signs, it was just like a street sign, but it had the name of the business and an access point where they could drive in and access, and it worked really well. So I don't know. I'm sure, like you said, the contractor probably has their ways of doing it, but I don't know if that maybe is something that could be addressed with the businesses when you guys do sit and meet with them as a group.
Thank you for that great idea. That's the next grant. Wayfinding signs.
Perfect. Any comments from the public on this item? Perfect.
Karen Eifert, I live in the Knolls, and I just want to thank Alex for thinking of and putting into place the ADA things before the construction happens. I met a really great attorney this last few weeks ago at a function I went to. He's a disability law attorney, and something he said just resonated so much with me. There will be people who say, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that to make ADA requirements met. Oh, we didn't realize that those things were happening. And he said a lack of planning on their part is not an emergency on your part. Meaning if you don't plan ahead and do these things, because you have town staff who are trained in ADA, you have the Arc of Larimer County that can help you out with anything to understand the legal sides of it, to ask them if you can include the grade or not, they'll tell you no. But you have all these resources around, and it's part of the town's job, the town manager, is that right? Town manager has to know that and has to delegate that out to the employees. Because just because you said you didn't know it, well, that's not my fault. That means you didn't do all of your job. And so that means if you didn't do all of your job, then you left out some things like ADA and said, oh, well, I didn't realize. But that's not my problem, it's your problem. And so I want to just not threatening the town whatsoever. It'll get weird on social media, but our Justice Department just sued the state of Colorado for not meeting ADA needs. And then it's been put out to all of the parents and out through all the agencies that take care of our children, that if your towns are not willing to work to make your towns accessible for your children to access, or for your children to play, or your children to have recreation, that's something that is not going to be tolerated, because they are individuals. Just like you're an individual, he's an individual, he's an individual. Everybody is an individual, and everybody is allowed to be able to participate in their town without boundaries. So I'm really grateful to Alex for planning ahead to include those things. And they all get tired of hearing me, but Arc of Larimer County will tell you any legalities you need to know. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, no more further public comment. May I get a motion on this item?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 44-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Second.
May I get a roll call, please?
Trustee
I have-
Teets.
Oh, final comments.
Yeah, sorry. I have a couple comments that I was hoping came up, but I just want to make sure that these grants are known to meet multiple items within our strategic plan, including pretty much all the items, of course, in infrastructure. But something else I think is super important is regarding communication and building relationships and communication with partners to Wellington, for example, CDOT and these other organizations, is essential and part of our strategic plan. So thank you so much for not only pursuing these, of course, but doing them within the plan that this board has designated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Mason.
Yes.
Trustee Gator.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the resolution 45-2023 is approved.
thank you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk, may you please read title for item D3?
Resolution number 45-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, amending the intergovernmental agreement for solid waste programming and infrastructure improvements.
Perfect. Mr. Cody Bird with Planning Director.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Mayor. I didn't realize it until I got through this first two items. I have the third intergovernmental agreement on the agenda tonight.
It's a hat trick.
Yeah. Interestingly, mine is maybe not quite as, no less important, but not quite as exciting as the first two. It is super important, maybe not quite as exciting. This third IGA in your agenda packet tonight is related to solid waste programming and infrastructure. And this is an intergovernmental agreement between Larimer County, Fort Collins, City of Loveland, Estes Park, and Town of Wellington joined in that IGA as well. The parties of that agreement have been looking for at least 6 years that I've been involved into the regional waste shed and the infrastructure needs to support the communities in terms of landfill. The current Larimer County landfill is running out of airspace and is going to have to close soon. The county's been working towards opening a new landfill, central transfer station, composting, recycling, hazardous waste, transportation routes, all the things that go along with solid waste management. And because those are such big projects, not all of them have been able to obtain the original agreed upon timelines for even start of some of those projects and completion of those projects. A lot of things have happened during that time, including COVID, and unanticipated construction cost increases, intergovernmental coordination that impacts different communities in different ways. all of those factors and more have resulted in these projects not being on track with the terms of the original 2019 IGA. And therefore, there's a need to kind of reevaluate what are the priority projects? Have they changed since the original agreement? What are the obligations of the parties? There's certainly a couple of things that have come up in conversations where the county's been engaging with private contractors to help make some of these projects more viable, and they were not able to come to terms on those agreements. Some of the sticking points include one of the original 2019 IGA conditions was that the communities would not implement flow control, and the county wouldn't be able to move forward some of the projects without guaranteeing volumes to some of these facilities to guarantee the fees to make them viable. And so there's a couple of those things that just are in need of an update in addition to the larger conversations. What this first amendment to the IGA for solid waste programming and infrastructure improvements is intended to accomplish is basically put all the good work that happened for the original 2019 IGA, basically just put it in abeyance, which is meaning to put it on hold while we sort out other details and information needed to continue the good work on solid waste programming and infrastructure. So that's what this first amendment is intended to do, is to simply put the 2019 IGA on hold, sort out the couple of, I'll call it low-hanging fruit, although it's not easy by any means, but there's 5 items identified that are kind of updates and things that need to happen in order to enable things to move forward. And then the parties understand that we're all going to continue to work together to come back and continue to pursue the waste management needs of the region. So that's the high level nuts and bolts. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. There's a draft resolution in your packet that would memorialize the IGA amendment. All 5 communities or jurisdictions have to sign that agreement for the IGA to be effective. My understanding is that the town of Wellington would be one of the first. The other parties have all identified that this is probably likely the path that they need to move forward in. There were still some questions around timing for a couple of the larger communities that have agendas that are pretty full and may not get this on there this year. Wellington approving it wouldn't change anything until all parties agree to it. There's really no risk to us in approving it. It doesn't, neither the original contract or the amendments really obligates the town to do anything except continue to participate. If those circumstances were to change at some point in the future, it'll come back to this board to consider the implications of those obligations.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand.
Real quick, you were mentioning the 5 low-hanging fruit. What were you referring to?
In the proposed amendment under section 2, this is on page 169 and 170 of your packet. It included things that the state CDPHE, Department of Health and Environment, is updating some of their rules and regulations and definitions around solid waste infrastructure, and those definitions don't necessarily meet the definitions in the original IGA. So there's some needs just to update things to keep consistency and the way things are moving forward in the larger state circles for solid waste. Revisiting and redefining the general obligation sections of the original IGA. That's kind of the responsibility for funding. What are the priority projects? What order do they go in? What are the regional needs? To reevaluate those and make sure that it's right sized for today's conditions. As I mentioned a moment ago, there's a prohibition for flow control, which is directing materials from the origin to a specified destination. That concept is a big policy question, especially for some of our larger communities that have large volumes and multiple haulers and other things. And that's a piece that's kind of viewed as essential to guarantee the viability of some of the projects. And so there's a current prohibition that this would relieve that so that other entities can move forward with considering those possibilities and if it makes sense for the region. And then one of the topics that's come up a number of times is just the Solid Waste Policy Council, which is our elected representatives. There's 2 elected representatives from each community on a council that advises the Board of County Commissioners. There's been a lot of discussion around what's the role of that advisory board and how do they operate. And there's not a clear set of bylaws that needs to be kind of reinvigorated and readdressed. So that's a component that we have the ability to help out with from our staff, can assist the county staff and others to come up with the bylaws that make sense for that. And the last item is reprioritizing the projects that are in the table on, I think it's page 180. There's a really clean looking blue table that's in the, an amendment or an attachment. What was the number?
196.
Thank you, trustee Teets. Page 196 has that table of the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 projects and a proposed timeline. You can see that last column for in service, 4 out of those 5 major projects should have already been operating by now, and currently none of them are operating. So, reprioritizing those to make sure we've got the right sequence and can make the projects viable.
Now is the current Larimer County, that's got 2 more years, is that right?
The county solid waste staff continues to make process improvements, and they're going through a lot of really significant diversion programs within their own operations to try to keep more and more waste out of the landfill to prolong its life. We've also been fortunate to not have too many major natural disasters that really take up airspace in a landfill very quickly. So through some, cautious planning and careful consideration of other programs, the county's been able to prolong the life of that landfill. And they're going to continue to keep doing that to kind of keep that operational as long as they can to allow some of the timelines for these construction of other projects to take place.
So recycle people, recycle. Space.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, trustee Wiegand, I don't have an exact answer to the time frame on that, but it has been a topic that's been discussed by the county operations staff and how the different things that they're doing to prolong the life of the current landfill.
So what are they projecting the opening of the landfill up here? If they can put it together?
That's actually one of the questions that still needs to be discussed is what is the right way to approach that question? Is it a full landfill? Is it one cell of the larger project? Opening it in phases, right sizing the project to the available resources and timing it over the life of that site. And how to approach that in terms of the proposed landfill facilities and how it interacts with the central transfer facility. The transfer facility is identified by most, if not all, of the communities as one of the most important pieces for the larger waste shed picture. And so, it's almost the highest priority from what we can tell as a group. But yeah, right sizing all of the projects to the available resources and the needs for the region.
Trustee Mason.
Thank you, Cody. Appreciate the information here. I think I'm okay with most of the items in the amended agreement. Obviously a lot of what we're talking about in the IGA here, I've got a whole boatload of other concerns that really don't have anything to do with the IGA here in front of us tonight. Obviously, some of the timeline concerns as far as accounting goes, seems like they don't have an operator for the landfill yet, and these things are kind of ongoing in the background. But as far as the amendments go, and I was actually more curious to see if we could hear from Trustee Daly being on the Solid Waste Policy Council here, but concerns about removing those prohibitions for flow control and that sort of thing. I think you had mentioned last meeting that you had some concerns there. I was just curious if you could expand on that.
Yes. Okay. So I think that, every single item on here for the amendment, I think are essential, but the flow control one is really what could possibly even determine feasibility of whether we get a landfill or not, whether we have a new central transfer station or not. But the question there is very complicated. So, but the problem is us discussing it is directly in violation of the existing IGA. It says that it's prohibited altogether. So when we're trying to brainstorm solutions and how to make this project feasible, we would be acting in violation of our IGA. So that's why that is essential there. Now, some of the other communities, and I'm going to just be really clear, are like, okay, so if flow control is not prohibited, what does that mean exactly? How does it work? And they want all the details at this point. But the point is, it is very complex. And it's going to require our TAC and the technical advisory committee to do significant work and represent each of the communities to kind of understand how that might work. I think what's important right now is we don't have all the answers or exactly what's going to be required for flow control, but we can't even understand how that could impact it until we remove prohibiting it. So I think that's a big part. So for example, some larger communities, let's say their residential trash alone, if that could be guaranteed to go to our landfill, that might take up 30% of the volume that's required to have that landfill even exist. So, and that's just one community, right? We're not going to rank really high on the flow control contributions just because we're so much smaller. But to crunch those numbers, to ask for those agreements, we have to have these conversations. And another thing that came out of this is once we define and operate within an IGA that's more functional, the thought is that likely there will be different intergovernmental agreements with each community individually as to how they're upholding and what they're committing to associated with these. So, but also every community has come to the table with different priorities. And ours continue to be traffic, pollution, making sure everybody who knows what's going on versus other communities are recycling or compost or yard waste. And everybody has their own priorities. So it is just so very complex, but we need to find some answers. So that's a long answer to that.
Thank you for the clarity on that. That's helpful.
Trustee Daly.
I think that Wellington is a great example to the rest of the planning, to the policy council, and even seeing and viewing this right now. We are the first to act of all the communities and to review and get it in front of our board. We also have been constantly talking about this throughout the years. Regarding bylaws and things, for example, I started on this policy council as a citizen of Wellington, not even as a trustee. So that needs to be cleaned up as to who exactly represents each community and how that works. So that's another item up here I think that needs obviously cleaning up. The point is that the old IGA was based off of needs of that time. It was not future-proofed. It was not COVID-proof. Nobody could have known what was coming and what's now important and technology improvements. It's just not applicable anymore and shown so by missing all of the dedicated dates that are included within the IGA. So right now we're operating an IGA that's not functional and not productive. I think this amendment will give us the opportunity to change that. So that's my overall things, but I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you. Trustee Gator.
So I understand like this amendment is simply just putting the old IGA kind of on in abeyance or pause, right? We're hitting the pause button so they can reconsider. So we're not approving these other amended changes. The concern that I had though was as we discuss about some of these things, I know you mentioned that currently we don't have any financial obligations in operations and other things, but I know that was one of the items that was said it needed to be discussed. Is part of those discussions potentially going to change that to where a future IGA, there will be a financial component that Wellington is now having to contribute? Is that one of the things that's being considered?
I can't say that it won't be considered it ever. But what I can tell you is the conversations right now, Wellington's solid waste volume is such a small drop in the larger regional bucket that it's not going to move the needle on any of the projects. When Wellington first joined this IGA, which is a voluntary join, it's also voluntary to opt out at some point if that were the desire of any of the parties. But the town of Wellington initially joined the IGA to make sure that we had a seat at the table in consideration of all these projects where a new landfill was proposed just outside of our town boundaries. But I feel pretty confident that right now there's not going to be a significant financial ask for the town I can't guarantee that because those conversations haven't
Sure.
really taken place yet. But know that if that ask is made of the town of Wellington, we would be at the table to have those conversations in full, and this board would have the ability to represent its citizens in a fiduciary responsible way. Made up some new words there. In a fiduciary capacity and to be responsible to your citizens, to make the right decisions for Wellington. But I really don't think at this point they're looking for significant financial contributions so much as they are looking for commitments of volume that would make the projects viable through tipping fees. We do recognize that all of Wellington's residents do pay fees for collection of trash, recycling, yard waste, and if you self-haul to the landfill, you have tipping fees there too. So as those fee structures change, there will be, impacts to our residents if those go up. We're cognizant of that, but we really don't have enough information right now to speak to what that is, except that we don't expect them to go down.
Got
I know
it.
that was kind of a vague answer.
No,
to a
that's fine.
question.
I
don't
just,
have all the details here.
something to keep in mind. And then again, if that is changed, that comes back to us. We're not tied into that. We can still say, hey, at this point, this is not what we're looking for. We have the option to say, we're not going to be a part of that. Okay, perfect. I think that addresses the issues. And I know the one question I had on the whole prohibition on what's the flow control, is that meaning that we begin taking, if we were to say, okay, we're gonna do flow control, we're guaranteeing that this goes to this landfill, does that mean that we have to now input our own trash service, or is it just the trash haulers in town are required to take it to this location?
Correct. It's more of the latter. That could be accomplished through policy that any trash hauler in any of the communities, I won't even use us as a specific example, but in any community, if by ordinance, the board says it's the policy of the town that all trash haulers or material haulers picking up waste in the town limits, they're required to take those materials to these specified facilities.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Trustee Teets.
I do have questions, and some of them do stem off of the amended agreement. The first question, however, goes to the town of resolution, the actual resolution itself. Line item number 3 states the town administrator of the town is hereby authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the town. What does that mean?
Means that Ms. Garcia could sign the agreement.
Okay, so agreement, the amended agreement or the agreement that is agreed to at a later date?
The agreement is presented in your board packet. So it's authorizing the town administrator to sign the agreement that's approved by the board. Not any other agreement, just the one that's approved by the board that's presented in your packet.
Got it. Okay, well, it has the mayor's name and Ethan's name on it. It doesn't have Patty's, so just FYI.
And Trustee Teets, that's on the resolution. The mayor signs all the resolutions attested by the town clerk. The agreement, which is the amendment which is attached, has different signature pages to it. And those were drafted by the county staff to put together a draft amendment. So if it has different titles on there for the town of Wellington signature page, and actually they just have it blank right now.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything on it.
75. So they left it blank for us to fill in the appropriate parties there.
Got it.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. I just want to verify that I'm not saying that I would allow our town administrator to make a decision without our board coming to a consensus and agreement and voting on said items before it goes back to.
Yeah, I think it's a
The
great clarification
PAC.
question, but the way this resolution is structured, it's authorizing the administrator to sign the agreement that's presented in your board packet.
Perfect. My other question, observation, section B, it's defined as revisit and redefine the general obligations set forth in section V for facilities, design, financing, operations, waste stream facility types, haulers for both Larimer County and the parties. So, and this comes into play when you look at, I know that there's been discussions with Republics and providing a single hauler service. It's been introduced to a few of us trustees and how we would feel comfortable with that. And I think we've pretty much voiced most of our opinion on that. But I just would like to sit and state that I would not be comfortable if that is one of the discussions to that agreement, is that we have to have a single hauler in order to enter into said agreement.
Yep, that's not included in this whatsoever.
Perfect. The remove prohibitions for flow control by parties. I think this was defined to us previously. I had asked about it to seek further clarification, and the prohibitions to flow control doesn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't really pertain to Colorado flow control. What they were more worried about was other states hauling in their trash to Larimer County. That was one of the ways they were looking at it, making it more financially feasible, as we would start accepting trash from out of state to go into that facility.
The conversation on flow control would indicate whether or not we would be able to make a viable landfill with the waste that we have available in Larimer County. So again, that's a great question as to where the trash could come from. Do they have to pay more? Are they not encouraged? Are they not allowed? Those are all questions I think that will need to be acknowledged and understood as part of this further discussion that this amendment will allow us to have.
See, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with removing those prohibitions, because Larimer County, if we're paying for said trash service and it's part of any taxes that you have to pay, the additional fees you pay for hauler services in the first place, and then we're going to open the door to outside states bringing in their trash to our community, I have an issue with removing that prohibition. Because not that I don't understand, we have to have a viable option for a landfill, but at the same time, are we forcing this to make it a viable option with that private public entity? So are we forcing to have to take other trash just in order to open up a landfill? Because if that's the case, we need to find additional options other than saying we'll start taking all of these other states' trash and filling up our community with said trash just to have a viable option.
The goal of this landfill is for diversion of trash, so that what the goal is to have this landfill last over 100 years. By taking excessive trash from everywhere, it would go against the specific goal of this facility. But all the flow control that we're discussing right now has to do with the parties within the IGA. So we're not talking about outside of that. The flow control is relating to the IGA members.
And I agree with Trustee Daly that the prohibition is specific to this IGA between the 5 parties. It does not apply to any party outside of those 5 on this IGA. And this IGA doesn't impact the ability for, say, Wyoming trash to be brought to a public landfill in Larimer County. I don't know all the details on the statewide component that you mentioned. I'm not sure that there's a requirement for out-of-state trash crossing a state boundary. But I can certainly look into that and ask that question of our technical group to see if they've got more insight into that. And I think Trustee Daly also made a good point that the trash or MSW, municipal solid waste, that you commonly refer to as trash, is one component of that larger flow control picture that a lot of the conversations are really about, less about the trash is the last stop. That's the materials that couldn't be recovered in any other way goes to a landfill, but flow controlling construction demolition waste to a facility that can recover those materials, flow controlling yard waste and composting materials to a facility that can manage that differently than landfilling it. Those are the bigger conversations, is how do we, as a region, implement policies like flow control or some alternative of that to thoughtfully manage where those products are going to where they're the most reusable, most beneficial to the region, and that only what's left that can't be recovered in some other way ends up in that landfill. But I certainly understand the concern, and I will continue to ask questions about that and see if we can uncover any more information about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Teets.
I'm good. Thank you very much. Yeah. This moment, we will have public comment.
I'm getting older. It's sore to walk up here now. I had a question and you don't have to answer it right in front if you don't want to or anything, but I remember Rebecca, you're on the solid. Yeah, you were on the, and so I've seen you at the meetings that I've gone to and stuff. And I thought it was said that Wellington's trash would not go there. It would have to be, it's gonna be like a transfer station. And ours will actually go down to the south one because there's other areas, other regions that are gonna bring in trash that don't have a way for that removal. Where they are, I don't know if I'm getting that confused, but I could have sworn that they said there at that meeting, at the waste management meeting, that it would not be Wellington's trash there. The man stood up there and said, your trash will be transferred to these trucks and hauled down to the south location. So I'm really confused because the man who does it said one thing and then I've heard another thing here. So I don't know which one is true, but it'd be great if you can find out an answer for the residents. It's something I would look for, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to understand that as well. And then the only other thing I was gonna say is I was a truck driver and I ran 48 states in Canada. And when I would haul recycled paper out of like Lewiston, Idaho, there's no special permitting that had to have happen. And if I would take huge rolls that took up the entire truck of paper to go to the places that they manufactured there, there was no special ones for that either. The only one that I knew of at the time was trash, and it's just placards that you have to have and clearances and all the paperwork to be put in place. It's not to say that it can't be done, but to my knowledge, it's just a placard that you need for your truck drivers, and they have to have a certain tag that says they have permission to haul that. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Karen, I know exactly the conversation that you're talking about, so don't worry, you're not making that up. Okay, so the concept is that part of the major part of this, there's two components of this like major project with the landfill is the central transfer station, which is at the current landfill location. And they're the ones who will be accepting trash from the majority of the haulers. And then they divert it into where it needs to go. That trash will then be trucked in trailered to the landfill via a dedicated route that's indicating uses I-25 to Elk Canyon. And that's why the road improvements, well, that's part of the road improvements that are occurring to handle that kind of truck traffic. But the consideration is that those trash trucks that, like the haulers, like the ones who drive on your street, if they were to end their route in Wellington, it does not make sense for them to drive all the way to the central transfer station. There would have to be an indication determination, this is what we've been advocating for, as to which one of those trucks can go directly to the new landfill versus which have to go to the central transfer station. And so what we've been advocating for as a direction from the board is to make sure that we're limiting as much truck traffic or hauler, your regular neighborhood trash trucks from driving on our streets. We want to minimize that as much as possible. So that's it. And the other thing that we've really been advocating for is if you have your truck full of trash, should you have to drive to central station? Or should we, as residents right here near the landfill, shouldn't we be able to drop off there or have a smaller transfer station so we're not driving all the way back? There's a lot of environmental goals associated with this project, and that's not exactly meeting those either. So those are items that we've been advocating for since the very beginning. So absolutely, we're standing up for this.
Perfect. Thank you for responding. Do I hear a motion on this agenda item?
Move to approve resolution number 45-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, amending the intergovernmental agreement for solid waste programming and infrastructure improvements.
Second.
Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the resolution is approved.
Thank you. All right, I now close the regular meeting and open the library board, time being 7:50 PM. Mr. Ross. Wagency.
Lajeunesse.
Library director will present.
It's Lajeunesse.
Yeah.
I know, it's a hard one.
Lajeunesse. There we
Good
go.
evening, board. Good evening, Mayor. Before we start this, I'm going to read something very quickly so that you understand. You get to see me in rare form tonight. Hello, love. Are there by chance bright yellow sheets of paper on the kitchen table? Yes. Arg. I'm sitting right next to them. Thank you. Love you. I guess I'm winging it tonight. So that everybody's aware.
Right.
I like to read from my thing so I don't lose my train of thought. So this evening is just an update. In your packet, I think page 200, I provided some numbers. Kind of just two things. I'm trying to respect your time. I know there's a work session and an executive session tonight. I wanted to share that we are coming off of the Bonanza, and I really enjoyed the Bonanza this year. This year I decided, residents, the board knows, I believe youth are also taxpayers. They buy things, so I have a duty to them as well. So this year I wanted to simplify the budget so that they understand the budget and how municipal fiscal management works. I blew it up and it was actually pretty fun and engaging. I do have manipulatives in case anybody missed it. Could pull them out and show you. So I took, so that people are aware, I took, our book line. I showed everybody, we get this amount of money. Oh no, we're getting low. This is what a grant does, and a grant goes in. They are not in and out lines. And at the end of the fiscal year, you look at above and below because certain lines are not in and out. It was great. Wait, candy, I kept losing the budget. They kept grabbing the candy, so I kept getting lower. So the Bonanza was a lot of fun. We are currently, as an update, we are currently $135,000 under budget. We have a couple months yet to go. So I will try to spend as much of that as I possibly can. I'm kidding. So I wanted to share some things. The summer reading program is our biggest event of the year. Again, we increased our numbers. I did include in the packet, so everybody knows I write my little notes to myself on everything. So we increased almost 38% with our pre-readers and youth, 13.9%. Our teens, we knew with the middle school moving, we knew our teen numbers would drop. We knew our overall numbers for the year would drop. So this number right here, I was proud of. They're still coming, even though we're not on their walking trail anymore. And the adults, 13.9%. To this point, new patrons, up to this point, we have 333 new patrons, which is great for a rural library. I compare myself to other rural libraries. In circulation, we are up 2,136 items. I watch everything like a hawk. I am noticing, I was watching DVDs. Every DVD costs $20. That's $20 we could save if we don't need them. It started dropping. Now that streaming services are increasing their prices, we're seeing our DVD things. So now it's like, okay, let's, so we're always watching everything. I wanted to share a quick analogy. This is leading into our 2024 goals right there. Strategic plan, I always have with me. We try to adhere to as much of it as we can. Some things we can't, but we can provide materials that help other departments do it. The last couple of years, I think of this often. My youngest daughter, I raised my children to own their voice, to not fear anything, take calculated risks. Sometimes it comes back on you. My youngest always had an answer for everything. So I thought, let's get you in debate. So we tried debate. And she was very excited, had all of her index cards. And the first time she competed, she stood up, ready to go. And the other team did their thing. And she said, oh, dang, you're right. Oh, oh, that was a smart move. And as a parent, I was like, oh no, oh. But it made me think she was listening. So she wasn't preparing for what she was going to say. So the last 2 years, my point is I have been listening and hearing our residents. In 2024, we are going to do a deep dive into what we've worked on the last 2 years. We've created and expanded our programming. Now it's time to really get deep into them and to see where our missing gaps are. Who are we not serving? Who can we serve better? So we have received quite a few grants, almost $9,000 to help non-traditional caregivers. There's a whole community where they don't know one another. We have $9,000 to help them. The Department of Education, our grant just came in, went up, and then we have another grant that we're very excited to work with on digital literacy. We're partnering with other libraries to see where we're missing. What can we help with? We can have adaptive technology. If we can have it through the grant, keeps it off of the budget. So next year is going to be the year where we get deep and we kind of take a break. We have expanded, we have our programs. Now we really need to solidify and make them permanent. So that's what I'm asking for, is to be patient. We have a couple programs. I do hear people, not just listen, but I hear people. I'm a year late, but we are going to do the Dewey dating night. This has been asked because I hear people. They come to me and it's a great honor. Residents tell me their deepest needs, and many of them come to me and say they're lonely. The pandemic is still hurting people. So we are doing Dewey dating night at the library. It's for singles only. We're going to get a temporary liquor license, Ethan. So this is why I'm going back. This is why I asked for a little bit more in our programming. We're good with what we have now, but these are some things that people are asking for. So I hear you and we will do it. Any questions from anyone? It's up to you.
I don't have any questions, Ross. I really appreciate everything you do for this community. I know me personally, I'd love to come in there and play with the 3D printer one of these days. That I mean, just there is so many cool things you guys are doing, and I'm just really impressed. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trustee Daly.
As always, I really appreciate the services of our library. I think it's what amazing asset to our community for sure. Just as a general reminder, this is the place where anybody can go that's free and have entertainment and people to talk to and resources and activities. There's very few opportunities for things like that anywhere at this point. So I love that you're being creative with services and engaging not just children, because a lot of people forget that libraries are for all people, not just kids. So that's fantastic too, that you're being creative with that. So I appreciate it as always. This is wonderful. Circulation's great. All your numbers are up. I don't think we could ask for more at this point. Thank you.
Trustee Gator.
So I appreciate the. Oh. No, I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know my kids had a good time looking at the budget stuff and doing things. I appreciate you giving them things to do other than just watch TV. It's much appreciated.
Learning
At the
styles are
Budget Bonanza.
accommodated.
The only question that I had for you is I wanted to know, I know over the last several years, you've been working on a youth board of trustees, and I thought you had gotten it going, but I'd love to get an update on what's happening with that. And
yeah, so the youth board, we were going to do like a municipal board of trustees. It turned into the youth council so that they could learn the budgeting and fiscal management. So that's where it is at right now. What I am hoping to do in 2024 is work with youth. We have some cleanup to do. Okay. I think we have learned some of our things are 30 years old. We need to update. I want to engage the youth in helping us do that so that they have a voice, and also people of color. A huge task force to help us in the library, which then I can identify the youth that would be interested in a municipal board Board of Trustees, if that makes sense. There was a time span there where it was not a good time to formulate a youth Board of Trustees. I wanted it to be a successful program, and there was just, it wasn't the right timing. I always go for the right timing for things. Everything's calculated. Perfect. Does that answer your question?
It does. And the question I have, and I don't know how your youth council works. Would it be possible, and I don't know if the other trustees would be open to this, maybe at the next library report or one of them, to bring in some of the members of the council and have them help you give an update on what they're doing?
I was going to, but then I saw it was a work session. And
Well, I know not today.
Okay.
I'm saying, can we put?
No,
that?
it's always on my.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Okay, if I had permission, like I have 17 people that want to come in. So I'm always like, oh, let me.
I'd love to see it.
Okay. I'll bring 13. But thank
Perfect.
you.
Trustee Teets.
I think it's a great demonstration of the hard work they do as part of the youth council. So it just shows that your voice carries over and higher than what you expected to. My only recommendation is when we're looking at planning and serving underserved areas, if there is a way that we could do an ADA reading days where people of all ages could come in and listen to a presentation, listen to a book, something along those lines. If it's one time a month where people that have adults and children, because believe it or not, 22-year-old adult children still love to listen to books. But if you set something like that up, I would love to see that inclusion added into that planning. My other thing is, what are the legalities involving having a singles gathering? Say if someone is attacked after they leave here, is that liability on us? If they start getting stalked by people, is that liability on us? Because I know it has happened in singles meeting places where you don't always end up with the person that you expected to meet in that. And there's movies about it too, but yeah, I watch Dateline on a regular basis. So come on. So I think it's great. And I am super appreciative of what you're doing with the library itself, the youth council. One of the things is sending you a link for how to make your own 3D printer reams out of recycled water bottles. I don't know if that's something that your kiddos would like to learn as part of the council, but it might help save on costs involving the 3D printing in general. I just thought it was kind of cool how they did it. Other than that, I don't have really anything additional. It's just congratulations on seeing where we've started. And I mean, this is from me being a 21-year resident here in Wellington to now. I love the fact that you guys are incorporating so much more than just books into the learning environment, because it's kids engage with books, but there are some kids that don't engage with words, but they still engage in STEM activities that keep them active and encouraged to learn more. Some people learn great by reading word, others learn by visuals, and you have to have hands-on. So I think it's great that you're offering that dual option for people that do want to come and participate, but might not like reading words. And coming to discover we might have a little that has some dyslexia issues. So I have a feeling that she'll be learning a lot through visuals and a little more along those lines. So I'm grateful that you're offering additional services. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Trustee Wiegand.
I'll keep it short. Appreciate the numbers that you got here. You're doing a fantastic job. Increasing participation within the community is fantastic. It, makes it all worthwhile. And like I think I said before, I'm kind of like your enthusiasm. You could wrap it up a little bit maybe, but but really do that. I mean, that makes it fun, and that's what we need to do, is have a fun opportunity here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you went right?
I did.
Perfect.
Actually, make sure to let me know when that singles night is. I'll be down there in a corner reading a book somewhere, and that's.
And I'll answer. Yes.
Just reading read a real book. Don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Not Goosebumps. All right. Perfect. Yeah, Ross, you do a great job. Seeing how the library goes and the emails that I've gotten from residents just talking about how amazing you are with the kids at the events and what you do with the library is just, it's awesome. So thank you for this presentation. Just keep it up. Keep it
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you.
Do you want an answer to some of?
I just,
Just-
it was more of
Oh, okay.
that devil's advocate of what could
Right.
possibly be facing walking into something like that. Is it sponsored or
Oh.
unsponsored or?
So remember, this is how I roll. I don't say no to things. And many people have come up to me and said, you know, I'm very lonely. What can happen? And my mind went to like, let's have a singles night at the library. Let's have a dating night where you find mutual interests in the library, different books. So this is where my mind is going, and I'm trying to figure things out. Of course, it will always be safe.
Right.
That is my number one thing about the library is it will always be safe for everyone, for all. I will have Sergeant Cherry down. Like I go after the people. In regard to ADA, just so that you're aware, and this is a good point, I've never been able to say it publicly. We do have a TV in the library. Sometimes it does upset people. And I do have to explain that we have to provide materials for all. And many times people in wheelchairs will sit and watch national parks on Netflix because that's all they can do. They don't have the physical dexterity to lift a book. What happens is the children are curious about the chair. Then they engage and start talking. So then that individual is part of a community. So we do make the concessions. All of the fonts I came through, all of the fonts in the library are the same and they are dyslexic friendly. So, you know, we're small world, we do as much as we possibly can. But yes, there's a TV in the library. There is a pointed reason for it, and we won't remove it because it does, you know, provide community in different ways. So the 3D link thing, I'll get back to you on that. I didn't.
It's super cool.
Okay.
I've like watched 3 videos on it just to see how it's done, and they color it with Sharpie. And when they stretch it, no, I'll send you the link and share it with you. It's I know I'm a crafting geek, so yeah.
Thank you, Russ.
Am I excused?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I now close the library board meeting and open the regular meeting, time being 8:07 PM. Any reports from Mr. Attorney?
I believe it was in 2021, Wellington Municipal Court moved to every other month. We had so few defendants in court that it really wasn't a good use of town resources to have court once a month. I think the decision was made. I went there and 2 individuals showed up. So we had to have the judge shows up, my office prepares, we have town staff, the municipal court clerk shows up. There were more staff members than there are actual people. However, that's changed dramatically. Municipal court has become very busy, and I thought I want to let the board know that beginning in 2024 in January, municipal court in the town will go back to once a month. So I think large part of that can be attributed to the sheriff's office is out in the community a lot more. And I think they're doing a very good job. We're seeing a rather diverse range of citations and summons coming in. And I think we'll also begin to see more as the town just brought on a new code compliance officer. So I think it's a good time to get back into once a month court. And if you have questions, let me know.
Trustees, you got a question?
Does our budget reflect that transfer over? The proposed budget? I'm sorry.
That would be a question for the town administrator. The municipal court needs to happen every once a month at this point. What you will notice though is we're not going to see more defendants, you know, and so we actually have a large amount of time that is involved in preparing for each month's court. And so if we have 40 defendants on the docket in January, then we'll have 20 on the docket in January and 20 on the docket in February, right? So a lot of that work, twice a month court doesn't necessarily mean twice the budget expenditure. So it's not really a 1-for-1.
Perfect. Ms. Garcia?
So yes, the budget does reflect a little bit of an increase just in case. But it is covered. I want to thank the Board of Trustees for those of you who were able to attend the budget bonanza. It was really great. And I really appreciated staff and their excitement in explaining their operations and the things that they work on in the town. The budget bonanza is a great opportunity for them to, talk to other individuals or residents from Wellington who we may not see on a regular basis. We did have over 90 participants, which is huge. Those are generally people, for those that were here, those are generally people who we don't see at meetings, that don't have an opportunity to participate online because they have young families and this is dinner time and bedtime and things like that. So it is an amazing opportunity for us to engage with residents on our budgetary practices. Don Rhodes is here and he was very excited to participate in our budget bonanza and thought it was just a really creative idea. And that coming from somebody who has spent a lot of years in local government, that meant a lot, for him to express that this was a really cool idea. So I want to thank the trustees for participating. I want to thank staff for their work in putting it all together. And I look forward to our 4th annual budget bonanza next year.
Thank you. All the staff communications are in the packet. Are there any questions on those items? No. Okay. On to board reports. Trustee Mason?
Nothing to report.
Trustee Daly?
I also wanted to give a thank you for the budget bonanza. I was able to solicit town feedback from 2 different parties that were there. Keep in mind also 90 people is a lot more than we fill these boardrooms with. So, and they're people who don't usually come. So it's a brand new perspective. I think that's awesome to add that to, people who show up as well. I was able to get 2 items of feedback. The first one was regarding potholes. They said, "Hey, you guys filled my pothole. Thanks so much." That's not what I expected when they were going to talk about potholes. So that was really cool. The other one was, "I love your library. It feels so nice to be there. You guys have wonderful variety and everybody there knows my name." I think that was the extent of the sticky note that I wrote. So, and that was some people who actually didn't live in Wellington. They didn't think that they were allowed to let me write on a sticky note for them because they didn't live here. And that's a good point, that our library is regional, not just for Wellington. So it serves a much larger population. But the budget bonanza is the most creative engagement process I've ever heard of. We should be presenting at CML to tell them how to creatively engage with the community. This is amazing and so awesome. And I learned stuff about the budget at the budget bonanza. I'm pretty familiar with it. And I still learned some new statistics and way to look at things, and had direct, conversations with everybody who's so intimate with that information. So I love it. Free pumpkins, everybody was engaged. It was just the whole team supported it, and they're busy already right now in budget season, and they all showed up and they did such an amazing job. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that.
Trustee Gator?
Perfect. So yes, appreciate the budget bonanza. So thank you to the work and staff of preparing everything. Specifically, appreciate the engineering staff and putting together the slideshows and everything for the water treatment and sewer treatment plant. I see the crane all the time as I'm driving by, but it was great to actually be able to see the progress that's been made on that. Because again, you can't see, especially the water plant, unless you're going way out east of town, you don't get to see that. So it was great to actually be able to talk to people about, these water projects I kept hearing about. Well, actually, if you walk over there, there's some great pictures to show you exactly what that was going to. And then did just appreciate the opportunity to engage with residents, and did have another gal that they just moved into the area. They're up off Owl Canyon, but she still came through, was interested in what's going on in the town. What are the things that are happening here, and engaging with that. So really appreciated that. And then did want to just highlight again, just appreciation for the members of our finance committee. We had interviews today, another gentleman potentially for that committee, but just appreciate the work that we have of the residents who have continued to serve on that. I know there's been a lot of challenges we as a town have been going through, so it's been great just to have the input. And again, we were talking about this today. I mean, we have multiple bankers accountants, purchasing. We've got people with such an extensive background in finance that serve on our finance committee, so we're very blessed in that. So we just wanted to send appreciation to the members of our finance committee on the work they do.
Trustee Teets?
Yes, so I only have three things. One, it was just more along the lines of my one-on-one meeting with Miss Garcia. Some things that I had brought up that I am kind of still waiting on information for is the land use code discussion with at-home businesses and what that looks like and how we can assist our community in one, having a business, creating sales tax, but also recognizing there's rules and regulations that revolve around, but opening up that conversation to see how that goes and what we can do and little caves that we can give to help people function and operate. The other one was the discussion with Larimer County and utilizing Clark Lake as an advertisement for the town of Wellington for wakeboarding, not wakeboarding, paddleboarding. You cannot operate an active boat on that lake with high wake. So I want to clarify that. And kayaking. So just to, I know that it was informed to me that we might not be able to advertise for Larimer County, but I see our advertisements for Larimer County all over our town of Wellington Facebook page and stuff like that. So I don't know why we would not be able to utilize that. The other is the ordinance related to the municipal laws that we might be having or definitely will be having come against us. And that is on the section 10. Just to kind of get maybe a follow-up on information. I know it'll be coming to us soon, but more on the ideals of any draft of the constitutional carry or removing anything as far as the right to jury trial. So, and you don't have to update me now, Dan, just if you have an email you can send out. Other than that, that's all I've got. And I am grateful for the budget bonanza. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend, but I did hear positive feedback from it. And then also that coffee and cars, I heard that went really well as well. So thank you to LCSO for holding an event like that again. I don't know if any of you guys were able to go over and attend, but I heard that it had a good reception as well.
Trustee Wiegand?
Again, I appreciate, like everybody else has said, especially Trustee Gator, about budget bonanza. The wastewater and the water treatment presentation that they had was first class. I mean, it was really neat. I hope everybody had the opportunity to see that. And besides that, no report.
Is that available in PowerPoint? Did we put it on the website?
Sure, we could see what's going on. Yeah.
But I can do.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I don't have anything. Oh,
One more thing.
oh,
One more quick thing, a quick shout out to the Wellington High School football team. We are currently 8-0. Home games this Friday. We're playing Bennett. They're 1-7. So I expect it to be a blowout. Let's take care of it.
that's a playoff game. Yeah.
But yeah, very exciting. So
Yeah, no,
no,
no, it's not. Okay, still regular season. Yeah. Pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll now close the regular meeting and open the work session for this evening, time being 8:18 p.m. And then we'll take a short recess, rearrange the room, and then we'll come back in and do our work session in the standard format.